has a society-related impact. So we start talking about trends and technologies which we've probably not heard of, but has a long-lasting impact for decades together. So in most conferences and all, we talk about Ubers and Amazons and Flipkarts and so on so forth of the world, because they have provided that disruptive innovation. They, as part of that whole innovation journey, they have brought together concepts which is actually changing the whole paradigm of innovation itself. So I think this is some of the starting points from an innovation journey perspective. So from our own perspective, as I just say that we will talk about more from an empirical evidence as to what SIFI observes in the market. So this is our trends. This is not, this is purely based on our experience of engaging with our customers. This is what we are finding as startup trends. One of the most important trend is, especially a lot of the startups are technology startups. Technology startup, the trend is, most of it is available to customers through their smartphones, through their tablets, through their laptop devices, their desktop devices, and so on and so forth. So connectivity is very, very critical. So if you're not able to connect with your customers, if your services are not available to your customers, if the accessibility is not designed in a manner that the customer is able to avail your services, all of that collapses. This is a very critical aspect. A lot of our relationships in the market actually start from the basics of the market. So, the way we say roti, kapda and makan. But along with roti and kapda and makan, I think internet is as essential and connectivity is as essential as roti, kapda and makan. So I think this is probably the fourth pillar of roti, kapda, makan and becomes the sort of essence. Few statistics around the penetration. So while designing a lot of solutions, some of these aspects actually come very handy. So what I mean by that is, we know some of these factors. So I'm not saying that I'm trying to bring about some factors which are completely unknown, but this is where I think some of our design parameters go by. So for example, that we know that accessibility at the last mile is an issue. So am I designing a solution which is so browser heavy that my user is not able to access the solution? Am I cognizant of the fact that about 70% of the access is actually happening over a handheld device? So are my applications designed in a way that the access through an app-based application is more convenient from a user perspective? So I think these are some of the things which is very critical. So always on connectivity, very critical. So we from a SIFI perspective, we are engaging with some of the very large unicorn companies, unicorn startups, as well as a startup which may have just started off yesterday from a connectivity perspective. So that's a very, very basic to ensure that the services that are being rendered from your perspective at least do not get throttled or constrained from a technology perspective. Very critical trend. Cloud, most basic but very critical again. I think we have now, at least when I talk to some of the very established organizations, the large organizations, the public sectors, the Fortune 500 Indian organizations, or even in the sort of organizations which are the Fortune 2000 Indian organizations, we still have a lot of struggle as far as cloud computing is concerned. Customers are not really sure, there are too many questions, there are too many cobwebs and so on and so forth. As far as the startup community is concerned, I think this is your basic ingredient. From our perspective, what we have seen is we have been there at the journey cycle at various stages. We are ourselves a cloud hosting provider. We provide our own public cloud for customers to spin up their own VMs to be able to drive the cloud computing story, or as well partner with other very large organizations like Amazon and SoftLayer and Azure and others, try and build up your cloud story. So that's a very critical piece of our involvement in this sector, is basically helping customers put out their solutions using a cloud. That's what we've been doing. We have enabled many startups to set up their operations on a cloud perspective. This is a no-brainer as far as the startup community is concerned. Your first basic thing, and as you scale, as you expand, something like a public cloud of an Amazon or even our public cloud can become expensive, because public cloud by very nature is designed for convenience. It's like your Uber of consumption from a transportation perspective in IT. As you scale, you need to transition from a public cloud to a private cloud. So we have, for some of the larger unicorns, for example, or forget unicorns, I think much smaller companies which are probably of a valuation of $30 million or $20 million and so on and so forth. We are now migrating them from a public cloud to a private cloud. Why? Because they have scaled too much. A public cloud is probably too expensive, or there is a regulatory need for them to use a public cloud, a private cloud. So that's where we are coming, and that's a critical trend that we are seeing. From a more holistic perspective, anyway the shift is happening. A lot of companies are junking their on-premise systems and moving to cloud anyway. So that's more at a B2B space or the larger space, but from a strictly a startup space, a clear trend is there. Companies are starting with the cloud, a public cloud, but graduating to a hybrid and then a private cloud. So I think that's a journey that we are seeing increasingly. Another aspect in this entire journey that we are finding is most of the startups want to be very, very transparent with the customers. And I think that's the essence of how you want to deal with your customers. What do you mean by transparency? So for example, if you are doing an online purchase, transparency and visibility. At every stage, we are getting a notification as to where we are in the entire journey cycle of a consumption. So for example, if you have bought a product on the net, the moment I buy the product, I get an immediate notification on my handheld device or my computer that such and such, we are confirming your product purchase. Then at various stages, from the time it gets packed to the time it gets shipped to the time it gets delivered, I keep getting constant notifications around the whole factor. So the companies want to be transparent and be visible, provide the supply chain visibility right to the end consumer. This is the transparency that today's consumer has begun to expect. If you're not providing the transparency, that is where the consumer brand experience is probably suffering. This is very, very critical. Most of the consumers today, I think this visibility and this transparency is something which is coming out and becoming very, very critical. Customers are actually talking to us in terms of how do we make our entire supply chain visible to our end customers. And those, by the way, include B2B players also. So for people out here who are providing solutions to B2B players, this is a huge space for you to be looking at. How do I provide more transparency in the end solutions that I'm pitching to my B2B corporate customers? So supply chain transparency, for example. Personalization. Today's generation is very different. The millennial generation or the Gen X is very different from what the previous generations used to be. This is a selfie generation. We all like to take our selfies, and I mean, selfies till 3 years back or 4 years back nobody knew of, but everything is a selfie moment. I mean, I think probably no sooner that this session is over, I think some of us might actually get up and probably take a selfie. So it's the day and age where people are obsessed unabashedly about themselves, and that's a clear trend. People are obsessed unabashedly about themselves, and it's a fact. People like to gloat about their own things, and it's accepted. It's cool. Personalization. So in any of your products that you want to engage with your customers, one of the trends that we are finding is how do you personalize your offering to the end customer? Very critical. A couple of examples I've shown. These are two big brands, by the way. They are not startups. ICICI probably been there for the last 60 years. IndusInd Bank probably there for the last 20, 25 odd years. They have understood that if I have to engage with my B2C consumer, how do I ensure, these are more probably better or professional photographs, but you can actually upload your selfie as well. So that's how your personalization is reaching out. So you can have your debit cards and credit cards with your own photographs personalized beautifully, and that becomes your signature card. That's a trend that is very, very visible. Back in the days, if people had a split personality, it was a psychological problem. Genuine. It probably still is. That person, Jekyll and Hyde, or probably a person behaving in a manner this way and the manner another way at certain point in time in the day. But today, all of us have two personalities. We've got our own individual personality the way we are, and we have our digital personality. Our digital personality is very different. Our digital imprint or footprint or personality is so different, we might not recognize ourselves. The way we talk, we may be more brash. We may not be that patient. We may not be humble. Because our digital personality, a lot of times, sometimes it's hidden. Because when you are engaging with a brand or a portal or something like that, maybe a lot of times your name is not visible. So your digital personality is very different from your actual personality. So today you have to really realize that when you're making products, and as long as those products are available and they're consumed on the net, ensuring that it is catering to this split personality that we all have and that we exhibit. That is about, so basically what I mean by social collaboration is when you're engaging socially, so using your Twitters and Facebooks and your YouTubes and other for sharing content and other things, they have a different aspect of your whole personality coming out. So your solutions, your products have to be designed in a way that it is enabling a social collaboration. I'll give you a statistic. All of us, we use Google. Now what Google is saying is for 90% of times when people are actually searching on the net for the first time for something, the user or the consumer is completely unbiased. He has no idea what he has to buy. 90% of cases, he doesn't know, he's just looking for a concept. And during that process of discovery, he starts engaging with brands. And as he is engaging with brands, these brands then start to navigate and start giving ideas to the consumer. And that is why 65% of the buying decisions are now happening based on how the brand influences the whole search process. Very critical piece of statistics. You can probably Google it up again and check it out. So 65% of your buying behavior is actually happening based on how brands are engaging in this buying process. That's the power of social collaboration, what people are talking about and so on and so forth. Most important is about brand experience. So whatever you are out there, whatever solution you are putting together to your customer, you want to make sure that solution is lapped up by the consumer immediately. It is always on, it is always accessible, whether it's in India, whether it's sitting out of Gorakhpur, whether it's sitting in Nepal, holidaying, whether it's in US, he could be in Fiji, wherever he is, accelerated content delivery. Whatever is your content out there that you're planning to put to the customer, have I ensured that irrespective of where the customer is, my content is accessible to him immediately? This is some trend which is very critical because this has a direct business impact. If I'm not able to access my server of whatever content I'm hosting, if my CDN technology is not clearly articulated to ensure that consistent brand experience, I'll lose out on a sale. This is where we've got a partnership with Akamai and one or two other providers where we ensure with our customers, especially some of the very large players, that irrespective of where the consumer is, as I said, Gorakhpur or Fiji or Nepal or Delhi or Gurgaon or wherever, this item is getting cached in servers which are distributed across the world. So there are 200,000 servers sitting in different corners of the country and beyond. Your servers can't be there at 270,000 places. But these servers can be caching your content. And that is what is providing that experience. So any of the larger companies, this is a must. So as you mature, as you grow, this is a must because this has a huge business impact to your whole solution. If this piece of strategy is not really hooked in well in advance, you will have a huge, you will basically face issues in terms of consumer experience because it's all about consumer experience. Based on the consumer experience, you get social feedback, and based on social feedback, you further scale up and so on and so forth. It's a whole vicious circle basically. So in terms of another trend that we are seeing, so I think these statistics are right up there. In the last, I think 3 to 5 years, the amount of uptake which has happened, and credit has to be given, I think, to the Prime Minister as part of his Digital India initiative, that the Jan Dhan Yojana has also got introduced. What Jan Dhan Yojana has done, and I think that should mean a great news for all startups out here, is that has expanded the footprint of digital payments in India in a very big way. You've got 20 crore new bank accounts being opened, 20 crore. Look at the staggering number. Massive. So 20 crore new bank accounts created in the last 2 years. Now, obviously, these users are going to be maturing over the next maybe few years, maybe, or whatever is the right period, to start to consume these services. So something, a service which they never had, by virtue of them having a bank account, that really means proliferation of a lot of services in this industry, using mobile wallets, mobile payment interfaces, and so on and so forth. So all your Ubers and other things, which is still a privilege of the elite, once it goes down to maybe an Uber equivalent in a rickshaw, or auto rickshaws is anywhere there, is anywhere there in terms of Jugnu, but maybe the day is not far off when it is there even from a cycle rickshaw, and those payments are being accepted using a digital platform. The day is not far off, because 10 years back we were surprised when we would see a rickshawala having a mobile phone. Today is not a surprise, because every single individual is assumed, just like he has a name, he's got a phone number. In every government form, along with your name, sex, this, that, you have your phone number. It is assumed. It's a given. That's how the society has evolved ourselves. So digital payments, huge. So any solution that we are pitching to our customers, how do I link it to a digital payment gateway is something that's there. With all this, security. Now this is one industry that continues to define recession. So 9/11, what it did, had this impact in the entire world, was made this industry recession free. This is one industry even in US, amidst the entire 2008, 2009, 2010 downturn and other things, your security industry has kept on growing. The world is becoming intensively intrusive. So you have physical security, you have digital security, you have cyber security that's breathing down our necks, but that's the reality. In today's day and age and today's context, without getting ourselves enabled from a security perspective, whether it is access or whether it is basically hygiene in terms of whether I have my disaster recovery, what is my disaster recovery plan, for example. That's again part of security. What happens if there is some issue on the servers that I have hosted? Do I have a plan B? That plan B is basically is linked to your security. It's just not security in terms of authentication and doing a vulnerability assessment and penetration testing after every 6 months and so on and so forth. But what is your business continuity? Very, very critical. Because if you're running your entire show, is your business, are you designing a business for business continuity? Very, very critical. We are actually helping a lot of these organizations just run their own businesses, and we are providing their DR as a service, not a full-fledged DR, but a DR as a service only when there is a DR. So it's like an insurance application. So you pay a premium. The premium is a reasonably modest amount. So it is not trying to, the sum is not designed, so DR is not designed to be, you pay the same amount and you have a resilient server and you basically replicate everything and you pay whole bandwidth charges for something which is not being used. You pay exactly when you need it, but you still have a DR solution, and that works, that ensures that you have business continuity. So that's one of the solutions that we are providing, and there's a huge uptake for it. Every organization, big and small, wants to ensure that their business from a continuity perspective is being maintained, and there is no hindrance to that. So from a big data and analytics perspective, another trend, I think Ashish I think spoke just before me, so I won't sort of